And to this day, I've learned more about God through the tears of homeless women than any systematic theology book has taught me. It's not to say don't read your systematic theology, but that's what happened to me. And in particular, in 1995, while I was a student in college in the suburbs, there was a group of poor and homeless families in Philly. And these families were mostly mothers and children. Dozens of them had gotten together in the middle of a struggle for housing. And they looked around North Philly, where we've got hundreds of abandoned houses and abandoned factories and all of this space. And yet there was a waiting list for housing. And they did something really courageous. These families decided to expose the struggle of homelessness and of homeless families and children, the fastest growing homeless population in the U.S. And they said, we want people to see that. And so they found this building that they could all move into. And incidentally, it wasn't just any building, but they picked an old abandoned Catholic cathedral. And they moved into it and they started living there. And as they were living there, we saw in the newspaper the story. And one of my buddies came into our college cafeteria and he threw down a newspaper and he said, "You're not going to believe this. Check it out." And the headline article said, "Church Resurrected." And it was a story of how they had brought this abandoned building back to life. And as we read on, it was fascinating. And then the article ended by saying that the archdiocese, the head of the Catholic Church that owned the building, had given them an eviction notice. And if they weren't out within 48 hours, they could be arrested for trespassing on church property. I don't know about you, but those are times where we kind of scratch our head and we're like, "God, why don't you do something?" And we kind of felt God say back, "I did do something. I made you. Get out!" And so we went down and we found those families that night. And we drove through the streets of North Philly and we found the cathedral. The families had hung a banner on the front of the cathedral that said, "How can we worship a homeless man on Sunday and ignore one on Monday?" And it took us a minute to digest the truth of that. But we knocked on the doors and we entered into that struggle. And it was the catalyst for an incredible student movement on our campus where many of us got involved in that. And not only did we become friends and family with these women and children, but it was also a place where we began to look at Scripture again. And we saw Jesus not just as one who came to help the poor, but one who came as the poor. One who was born in the middle of a genocide and came from a town where they said nothing good could come, who knew suffering from the moment he entered this world until he died on the cross. And it was in there that, all kinds of stuff happened. I can't tell you all the stories, but it didn't end after 48 hours. In fact, one interesting thing was that the media made it look like the church was kicking homeless people out. And that's because the church was kicking homeless people out, And so they brought in the fire marshal and they said, we'll say that it's in the interest of the family's safety that they're, it's a fire hazard. And so we'll have the fire marshal get them out. And the night before the fire marshal was to come, there was a knock at the door at about midnight. And of course, we were there, and a few of us got up, and we answered the door together, and we saw outside a bunch of firefighters. And our instinctive thought was, "Oh my gosh, they've come to evict them right now, and it's the middle of the night, there's no media and all this, and the kids are asleep." So we start talking a mile a minute. And we're like, "Hey, listen, can you please come back? We didn't know that you were going to come tonight, and the kids are asleep, and it's just, And they said, no, listen. We're not here to kick you out. In fact, it's just the opposite. We know what's happening, and it's not right. We're here against orders, and we could get in really big trouble for being here. But we want to help you get ready for tomorrow because the fire marshal is going to come." And they took us to the fire department, and they helped us get smoke detectors, boxes of them, and they helped us get exit signs and fire extinguishers, and we worked all night, We got ready, and then the next day, the fire marshal came with the media and the archdiocese officials and the police, and they walked through the building, and he's like, "I'm not going to kick them out. They're close enough to meeting fire standards." We're like, "Yes, Lord!" And it was in there, that we began to worship. We would have worship services in the old cathedral. In fact, we would climb up in the bell tower and ring the bell, and neighbors started coming, and we started reading the book of Acts, where it says all of the believers were together. and they shared everything they had. No one claimed any of their possessions were their own. And it says, and there were no needy persons among them.